things like that. It's just like a story that you tell to people, and they want to be in that story. They want to experience that story. And I do too. I even see my video and I'm like, oh man, I need to go to the cabin, and it's really more special when they've been following that story too, and they get there and they're like, okay, I'm in the story now. And it's kind of inspiring.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Hideaway Show. Today, I am joined by the owner of Out of Bounds Retreats, which currently features 2 killer, unique properties in Banner Elk, North Carolina. Plus, she owns a couple of nice beach houses down near Holden Beach. I'm joined today by Jandy Salguero. Jandy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. I'm glad we were able to find time to connect and hop on here and talk more about your properties. I will say, hand up, I've kind of geeked out over your properties for a little bit of time. Saw them on Instagram while we were trying to grow our accounts. And I'm like, man, like these properties are crushing it. Tons of followers on Instagram. I'm like, we need to get to this level. So I'm so glad we were able to connect and would love to hear more about your story, as well as I know our audience would as well. So let's start there. Let's start from the beginning. How did you get into real estate investing, short-term rentals? Where did it all begin for you?
But we started in long-term rentals. We started buying like just a few single family homes. And when the market started going higher and the returns weren't as great on that, we built a beach house and then kind of caught the short-term rental bug. So my husband still works as W-2. He works full time. And then I manage all of our real estate and doing the designing and the buying and all that jazz, everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm interested to know. So you started out in long-term rentals, and it's funny. Everyone always says they caught the short-term rental bug in
Yeah.
some form or fashion, and everyone's a little bit different. And what I think is interesting is your first short-term rental was a beach house. Mine was also a beach house. So I'm curious to know. You still own yours. I don't own mine. So I'm curious your take on owning a beach house. Did you know what you were getting into with that from, I will say, the upkeep of being in a beach market and everything that comes with that?
I'm not sure we understood the exact level of upkeep. Like air conditioners often last 6 years. Our pool heater we fixed multiple times, and I think it's almost 8 years maybe since we built it. We definitely made a good choice in building so that we didn't have to worry about anything for a while. Uh, I feel like it would be much harder now to get into the beach market, which is why we haven't built another beach house. We've always wanted to build more beach houses, but um, I just don't feel like the returns are there because it's gotten so expensive. And it also feels like, when you're buying something or building something that's double what it was 5 years ago, it's a little scary to think, how much equity you can lose, which you can lose a lot at the beach, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we should move from there to the mountains. We love our beach house though, and we love our beach. It's just this quiet little family beach, and we plan to have that forever. So,
That's awesome. So
hmm
you have 2, correct? There,
yeah,
did you build both of them?
yes.
Oh,
hmm
that's awesome. So
So we built
you
one, and then
built all
about
your
a year and a
properties.
half. Yes, yes. And I mean, there's the method to that madness because it certainly feels like madness at this point in the mountains, because the build time and cost is so considerable there. Um, it's when you build something, if you do it right, what we've learned is that you can really build for about 80% of the final value, right? So instantly, when you close on that property, you have 20% equity. So very often, you can get a bank to finance the bill and not put much of a down payment on that property.
That's interesting perspective, and I think building properties to a lot of people, some people are very intimidated by it, and I think other people really, I will say, oversimplify the process. So I go, it's easy. You just find a builder, you build the house, it's up and live, it's brand new, and you're done, right? And I think there's a lot of different components that go into it, especially if you have your hand on the design, the finishes, and how you want the property to turn out. There's a lot of decisions to be made. There's a lot of, I will say, hiccups that happen behind the scenes that no one knows about. So kudos to you for having built all of your short-term rental properties and going that route. I think, like you said though, being able to have 20% equity right out the gates on those builds is tremendous, and you get to curate that property to what you want that property to deliver for your guests, whether that be in the mountains or the beach market.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
If you're
so
going to do
you
it, why wouldn't you just build it, to be unique and all those things that you would look for in a property anyway if you're buying one. So,
right. Yeah, and I think
mhm.
that's where I believe this industry is heading, right? Is towards these more unique and even experiential stays. I've seen a lot of big names in this space that are offloading a ton of their properties. People that have been preaching Airbnb for the last 4 or 5 years, and now they're taking their 45 or 50 properties down to 5 or 7, and even buying chunks of land to develop unique properties on, because they're starting to see what it actually takes now in this industry to stand out. It's not the cool house and cabin in Gatlinburg. It's okay. There's thousands of properties in Gatlinburg now. Even that market, you have to do something that allows you to stand out, whether that be design, whether that be amenities, whether that be doing something on social media. You have to find ways to stand out. And if you're not, those properties are just slowly, I think people are seeing those returns diminish further down. Granted, there are still people who bought during COVID that have 2% interest rates that they're those properties will still do great forever, but it just comes down to a matter of how many properties do you want to manage. And long term, like I said, I think the uniqueness is what's going to allow people to stand out and get the returns that they used to see in 2020, 2021.
Yeah, and I think without that uniqueness, it's sort of a race to the bottom on ADR.
Yes.
So you just got to have it. And my philosophy going for the through all of our short-term rentals, like from the very beginning, and especially in the mountains, is if we are in the top 5 to 10% of properties in the area, it sort of doesn't matter. Um, there's a lot of things that don't matter for you, right? Like just worrying about competition, like who else is building around you and what they're building, what they're doing. If you're in that top 5 to 10% because of your design, your amenities, all of these things, then there's just a load off of, your calendar is going to get booked out a certain percentage, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah. What's your take on, I think there's some fear with investors that they'll buy properties and I will admit I was one of those investors on our first property that, like, the property's good enough, or there's a level of bias when you look at the property, like, oh, I love this thing. My family and everyone's told me the place is amazing, it'll rent out, but it simply doesn't. What is your take on design and uniqueness and standing out? Does that fill the calendars, or is that, like, how does an investor justify that type of investment? Because a lot of times on design, you're not talking $500, $1,000. It's thousands of dollars, and for
Right.
someone to say, let me put $15,000 into this property with fingers crossed it produces a return. How have you handled that with your properties?
In particular with the cabins, because they are more unique. Our beach houses are uh, not unique in that way. But the beach is a little easier because there's only a certain amount of land on those islands and everything kind of rents, right? So the beach is a little easier in that way. For the cabins, I mean, we just knew, my husband and I both, we talked about in the beginning, we have to do something unique because, you're putting a lot of money, especially we bought raw land and developed it. It's way more expensive that way, but you have the upside can be a lot greater. Um, but yeah, it's not cheap at all. And it always costs more than you think. For instance, at Firefly, we have this huge deck under the house. And I told my builder, I was like, um I want a big deck under there, and I want it to be like a little spa oasis for people, to sit and be in the hot tub. We have a sauna down there now. And he was like, okay, but we're going to have to build a retaining wall, which was like a surprise $10,000. And then, the deck and finishing off. And it's not like, it's pretty simple down there, but it was expensive, and then another thing that I told my builder, I said, I want a reading nook in the cabin, firefighter cabin. We have this reading nook. in the loft area. And I said, I want to, when I get in the reading nook, I want to be sitting outside of the cabin. Like I want it to be a pop out. And I want a huge window there and I want to be able to sit and look at the trees. And, it's going to be unique. And he was like, okay. And he did it. And it cost, I don't know, I didn't add up what that particular feature cost, but each thing that we did, like just doing a small outdoor shower at our second cabin, each thing we did, the builder would be like, that's going to cost, it's above budget. But we have never regretted, not once regretted an upgrade in any of the things that we've built. Never.
Hey guys, real quick, the only way we can continue to grow this show to bring on bigger and better guests is if you guys rate, review, and share the show. So, if you could take 2 seconds and leave us a quick 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, it would mean the world to us. But even better than that, we'll be able to reach more real estate investors and help them build out their dreams through unique short-term rentals. Now back to the show. And I think that's what the big takeaway is for people is, yes, it is an investment, but almost like put the hat on of like the guest coming through the front door, right? Would they want to come to, sure, they may want to come to just a basic cabin in the woods, but would they appreciate a reading nook that's bumped out, that just experience of having that, or a sauna down below, or an outdoor shower, all of those components. And I think, and we'll get into this in just a minute, that I think is also a crucial piece of this is how do they envision themselves actually utilizing the outdoor shower or the sauna or the hot tub or grabbing a book and reading in that reading nook. If they can see someone else doing that and envision themselves there, you've taken a cool amenity that someone sees on Airbnb and now taken it to like, oh, like someone grabs their phone. We always say this, grab their phone, they show their significant other and be like, I need to go there. I want to read a book in that reading nook. I want to be in that sauna under that deck. I want to experience that spa oasis. It sounds silly, but when people see someone else doing it, they naturally envision themselves doing the same thing. And I think there's more of an emotion at that point that gets people to book. And you can capture some of that through photos on Airbnb. But I think there's another avenue to be able to do that. And I think that avenue, I know that avenue is social media. And you, with Out of Bounds Retreats, have grown a nice following on Instagram, 0 to, I think, about 104, 105,000 followers. I'm not correct. So,
Yeah.
question for you and for the audience: how were you able to go from 0 to 100,000 followers? Was it one post and 100,000 followers just right there? Calendars full,
Oh my
problem solved.
gosh.
Is that how it
No.
was?
No. And I never really liked social media that much. I would post pictures of my kids or something every once in a while, and I'm not even great about that, but just kind of for myself to have like a timeline online for our family, and that was about it. And so in the beginning of whole cabin, I don't know, insanity that because we bought this property and it just kind of ballooned. Our ideas just kind of ballooned. My husband at first was like, let's just build one cabin. And now we're doing 4 there. But um, in the beginning, I just knew that in order to make sure that it worked, because it was so much money, it's such a big investment, such a risk, well, a lot of people see it as risk. That's kind of another topic. But um, I just knew that I had to make it work. Like it just had to work. And the one way to do that is to make sure that you have a social media presence, you have direct bookings through there, or at least just people, more eyes on your property. And as in the how, it was just consistency and great photography and videography, which some I do, some I don't, a lot I don't. Like all this beautiful cinematic shots, the drone shots, I don't do that. I don't have that capability. So I hire people and yeah, it I put it I don't know. It's a big investment. It can be a big investment, but I think it's definitely been worth it for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, 100,000 followers, and I'm sure you are getting a decent amount of direct bookings
Hmm.
from social. And you mentioned something I think that's critical is I think having a social presence is great, but I think a lot of people are like, cool, like I can go out with my cell phone and pan the property and show some cool stuff, and that's fine. You will get some traction. You may have a reel that'll pop off, go viral. Maybe you get a couple thousand followers. That's great, but the biggest differentiator is high quality content. And you mentioned that, high quality photos, drone videos, cinematic shots of the cabin. I think that's the type of content, and I think from your experience you're realizing that as well, is that helps though get more exposure for those reels, for those posts, but then also followers as a result of it. Because it's not just a cell phone. Granted, iPhones today are a lot nicer than they have been in the past, and they do capture amazing video. But someone who's behind the camera that knows what they're doing and how to capture a property to spark that emotion, that right there, I think, is a key piece to be able to grow your social presence.
That's hitting the nail on the head, the emotion behind it, because, you know, you see like this panning shot of, you know, a person in the hot tub just like enjoying and the beautiful light around them, or the leaves falling at in fall time, or things like that. It's just like a story that you tell to people, and they want to be in that story. They want to experience that story, and I do too. I even see my video and I'm like, oh man, I need to go to the cabin. And it's really more special when they've been following that story too, and they get there and they're like, "Okay, I'm in the story now." And it's kind of inspiring. I don't know. But I mean, I can't do that like I said on my own, so that's why I hire people. In the very beginning, I I thought of a number of what I probably thought I needed to spend on each cabin to kind of launch it and get it off with into social media, and just like have listing photos, that drone video, that I have found to be so useful. Um, and I had to sell my husband on that number because it's a big number. I mean, I think around 5,000 a cabin is what I've spent. I'll just say it. It seems big if you're starting out and you haven't really spent money on photography and videography. But I think by far that has been our biggest asset. And you have those forever. And we try to do each season, we'll try to do a different set of, photos and video that we can use year after year. And so that never goes away. I mean, you still have that. So it's not like you're using it once and then it's gone. And that's having, you know, 4 or 5 people sometimes, come in. It depends on what each of their skill sets is. If you get like a really great drone photographer, um, and listing photographer, it's going to be more expensive. But, you may get someone who doesn't have all the equipment, who's more going to give you, um, like we've been working with one girl recently a lot, and her storytelling is amazing. She doesn't have the editing quite that like Levi Kelly has, right? But
Mm-hmm.
she goes in and she does something really unique, and she's local, so she can go more often. And she's kind of getting started, so we've worked out a deal on that, on how to compensate her. um so, there's a whole range of different types of photographers and videographers and creators who you can bring in to do different aspects, to fill different aspects of what you might need for your content, or just like your Airbnb listing photos, those sorts of things. So, we've tried to really diversify what we do along that line. Um, and who we bring in. But number one thing that we don't do is just bring in creators who have a big following, who just post one reel, and they do, maybe they're doing restaurants and they're doing bars and, all kinds of different things. Those are the ones we don't find very valuable for our space.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you haven't really worked with. We found out this. We learned this the hard way. There is a difference between influencers and content creators. Those are two. They are not interchangeable terms, and we learned that. What you're saying is you haven't worked with or found success in working with influencers who have following that, like you said, are doing things to do in the area, restaurants. Oh, by the way,
Right.
come stay at this cabin. Um,
As far as, I mean, maybe giving away some days to people like that can be valuable if they're local to you.
mhm.
We have found a little bit of value in that. By far, for me, the best value though is the content. So if they're not giving you content that you can use over and over again and cut in different ways, then for me, it's just not as valuable.
Yeah.
And one reel is just, I mean, it's like a blip, it's just, it could go viral. You could get a lot of bookings from it, but what I play is a long game for social media. what I put in, that first $5,000 that I, buried between different creators and put into Firefly, I expected that to roll into Skywatch Cabin, our second cabin. So that right when Skywatch Cabin came, was ready and came on to Airbnb and our website, it was going to have traction. And it did happen. It was great. Um, we're typically around 20 to 25% direct bookings. So that's only through Instagram. We don't advertise in any other way, and we don't do paid ads on Instagram or Meta. So it's literally just people looking at our property on, maybe finding a reel that's gone viral or just following us. But when we launched Skywatch, our first, I want to say it took us about only 2 weeks to get fully booked for the next few months. Or okay,
Oh
so
wow.
we only really book like 45 days out. So if you look at our calendar, it will not look very full, which is the case with a lot of properties. And especially
Mm-hmm.
because we have couples retreats. This is just a side note. We have couples retreats, so they don't book out as far as a lot of other places. But um basically what I'm saying is that when we put Skywatch on, I could instantly tell, I mean, really tell that our social media had booked that up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, it worked, we'll see if it keeps working. But that's our goal for the A-frame that we're building right now. I'm just really hoping that it won't take us very long. Whereas Firefly, it really took us like 3 or 4 months to get our calendar full.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you with that A-frame? I'm curious. Are you trying to pre-book that out in advance? Do you have a strategy for how like trying to get bookings like, hey, sign up to be one of the first to stay at the cabins? Are you guys doing anything like that?
Absolutely not.
Uh,
And
which is fine.
um, because build times in our area are so slow. And like, Skywatch cabin is 450 square feet and it took 18 months to build.
Oh wow.
We're going on 2 years for our A-frame. It's only 1,800 square feet. So it's, you would not think, but, and I kind of learned my lesson because I scheduled our first photographer about 2 months after our builder said that Firefly would be done. And I ended up having to cancel him and I felt awful. And I was just never again because, he's a smaller creator and he has a family to support and I canceled, but I couldn't help it. But yeah, I'm not ever counting my chickens ahead of time. Never again. But we're hoping to have it on in the summer, but
Yeah.
just yeah.
With the variability of builds and doing
Yeah.
unique builds, I will say, I think that is spot on. Like a lot of these things, you expect them to take so long, and unfortunately, sometimes those lead times take longer. Things change. Weather, also, I know at least for us when we're building our properties in Kentucky, weather plays a huge role. If Mother
Yes.
Nature cooperates, we can build.
Especially if you have
If
steep land. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
A lot of that stuff you have to factor in that's outside of your control. So that makes sense. So overall, I think your stance on social media, having now over 100K followers, I guess before I leave from that, how long did it take to get to 100K? Do you know roughly?
Um, so I believe about a little bit more than a year after I started the account, I still just had 600 followers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really because I had someone come and post about it who had more followers than I did, who owns another cabin. Um, just before that, I was like at 250. So it was so slow.
Mm-hmm.
This build was so slow. The build of the social media presence. It felt like it took forever, and so I had them, and then I had Journey Moore come out, and they ran a giveaway, and I got about a couple thousand followers from that. And with their content and the content that I started to get from between Journey Moore, Ethan Abbott's, and some other people, at some point in the next few months, I had four, I think, go reels go viral at the same time. And that, I don't know, they were maybe the engagement was just bouncing off each other. And and promoting them more. So um, I got a ton of followers off of those and it just kept building after that. But mainly, I think it's just to do with consistency. It was a lot of work because I was not that into it. But the practice, the practice that you get from just posting and just posting bad reels, maybe posting shaky video. If you have to post shaky video, that's okay. You'll see reels on my Instagram that have shaky video before I bought a gimbal, and just the practice. I remember the very first reel that someone else the first person who came to visit who had more followers than I posted this reel one day about like me reading in the reading nook and just all the different positions I might read in. And it was just a silly reel. And he sent me a message that said, yes, this is it. This is it. Keep posting stuff like that. But it took me a while of just posting and practicing and figuring out how to get that little it factor on just this tiny little thing that caught people's attention.
Yeah.
And every time you post something, you're practicing that. And then at some point it just got easier to kind of instinctively know what might do well. And then sometimes I post stuff and I'm like, this is gonna do great. And it got like, 2,000 views versus another one that and I could spend an hour on it. And then I post something. My reel that I posted that has gone the most viral, I think it was like almost 9 million views, and I got like 30,000 follows from this one video. I spent 5 minutes on this video while my husband was waiting on the couch next to me, waiting for me to watch a movie with him. And I was like, let me just post this real quick. I just got to post something today. And that was it. So, I mean, you just never know what is going to catch on and what is going to do it for you. And so you just post. Just
Yep.
post stuff and learn from what other people are doing who are successful. So,
I am
it's
so
kind of
glad
silly.
I'm so glad I'm not alone on that front because I'll spend same with our properties, right? I'm doing the posting and clipping the content and the audio and all that stuff, and I'll spend some days, like you said, some days are 5 minutes, some days are like an hour and a half, and I get done with the hour and a half, and I'm like, okay, this is the one. Like the call to action's perfect, the
Yes.
shot is perfect, the transitions are perfect. Like this is the one to do it, and you post it and you check back 2 hours, and it's like, huh, 500
Nada.
views, and it's like what's going on with this? And then the one you like quickly like just like copy paste text,
Yeah.
put on one video with a song, post, and then all of a sudden you look and it's got 17 million views, and you're just like, it took me all of 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I think it's the you said it perfectly. It's the consistency up front. I think that's something that it takes time to build that momentum on Instagram, and for Instagram to understand what account you have and what you're pushing out. Once it learns that, and then you couple that with high quality content, that's when things start to compound. Your followers start to grow, your engagement goes up, your chances of your videos surpassing over 1 million views starts to increase. You still can't plan for what video is going to hit 1 million views, but what you can plan for is you're going to start seeing more engagement and more follows as a result of that. It's the consistency and just failing out the gates. I was very much like you. I was a consumer
Yeah.
of content. People would send me reels. I would watch them. That was it. And then was thrust into this world of having to post. And I posted a video and I'm like, I think it's great. And my wife looked at it and she's like, that might be the worst reel I've ever seen. Like, no one is going to
Oh,
do anything with that. But it wasn't like anything that was harsh, but it was just that reality of like, you have to go through that learning lesson and figure out that's a skill set of figuring out how to post. Sure, you can outsource that, but I think there's some value in being able to understand that skill and what you're looking for in a post. So when it does come a point in time, if you want to delegate that, you know what you're delegating, what you're handing off. So, but again, consistency, high quality content. That was the thing that light bulb went off. Like I would get people reach out to us. They're like 300,000 followers. Like, yeah, I would love to come stay at your place for, a free night in exchange for content. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this person's got 300,000 followers. This is going to do it. And then we'd get content back and be like, it's cool, but like
yeah.
nothing crazy good and nothing came from it. So the high quality content
Well,
piece is so valuable.
yes. Yes. And I also just think um you can't predict because they change the algorithm all the time. So you can't predict. You just control like the things you said. That's what you can control. Because I've had times where I'll hear an announcement about an algorithm change and my views are like a tenth of what they were a month before. I mean,
Hmm.
it's kind of crazy. I feel like I've been in a view hole for, I don't know, 4 months now. I think a lot of people feel that way
Hmm.
because they're pushing different types of accounts at different times. And so I just think the consistency, control what you can control, have your good content, really good content, beautiful, beautiful content, because that's what's gonna catch people's eye. So,
Yep, and spark that
mhm,
emotion. That's the
mhm.
biggest thing. So, quick question for you before we transition to another topic. You are just on Instagram, correct? Have you branched out to the world of TikTok at all, or are you just primarily Instagram?
I have about 150 followers on TikTok, doing pretty good there. But the thing is, I probably should be on there more. I just feel like Instagram's a lot already, and
Hmm.
I'm doing a lot. So I haven't done it. I know that I should. There's because I get a booking every once in a while where somebody will say, "Oh, I saw your cabin on TikTok." Because I've had a few TikTok influencers just come stay and post about it, as like an
Yep.
exchange.
Yep.
So there's definitely value with that. I do think that for our type of space, people shop more on Instagram.
Yep.
Um, I think there's other things, there's TikTok shop and all that, but for actually, travel, I feel like Instagram is where people are looking.
Yep. Yeah. I that was very much us as well with Instagram. The focus was growing Instagram because it's a more mature platform. People trust Instagram and being able to click on the link in the bio and go book a stay. I definitely agree with that. The one I will say, TikTok came to us unexpectedly. Like we had it there, and it was one of those like, okay, we post on Instagram, copy paste, post on TikTok. Maybe it'll take off one of these days. And the problem with TikTok is, I learned this, is under a certain amount of followers, you can't have a clickable link in your bio. So you can have the link there, but then people
Yeah,
gotta type it in. And unfortunately,
right.
in today's day and age, people are lazy. People don't want to do that. They want convenience and things to be fast. I will say for us, all of a sudden, TikTok just took off overnight. Like things grew. We're almost at about 40,000 followers on TikTok. And we get so many people that'll call us or text us and be like, yeah, I saw your stuff on TikTok. And I'm like,
That's
we
great.
had no expectation for that. I will say that is very abnormal. I don't think many people are seeing a ton of success on TikTok. But if you can make both platforms work, I think you're dipping into multiple audience and I don't know what the number of consumers or users are on those platforms, but it is way more than is on Airbnb, VRBO combined
Right.
on those
Yeah.
social platforms.
Yeah. If you have the bandwidth for it, I just think I haven't yet had the
You're busy.
bandwidth for it. So
You got a lot going on. You're building cabins.
I'm building. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I homeschool.
That
I
too.
work from home and all that. So, and that's kind of another thing. I mean, I I think that it's really important to protect, you know, your love for what you do. And when every once in a while, I'm like, I just need a break from Instagram. I just need a break,
Nothing wrong
and
with
I
that.
need a break from posting. And so I'll arrange, for some other people to post, like the local girl that we've worked with recently, the creator there. I'll say, hey, can you post a couple of things this week? And maybe that week I only post twice, and I think that's important to make sure. I think it's important for most of the time to make sure you're consistent, but you know, it's okay. It's also okay to kind of protect your peace and take a break because it can be a lot. And I also just kind of I try to make sure that if I'm on Instagram, I'm creating more than I'm consuming, which can be difficult because you can kind of get roped into consuming, right? So,
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
mhm.
So I think for anyone that's listening, I think the biggest thing with social, if you do want to grow that presence and start that, what's the biggest thing for you is just consistency and finding high quality content. Those are the 1-2 punch to grow that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
100%.
Yep. Awesome. So I always tell people this. I could talk on social media for STRs forever just because it's been so great for us and I've seen the benefit of it with so many other hosts. But I do want to transition a little bit over to, you've built two cabins in Banner Elk. You have the two you've built down in the beach market. With those properties, Has it been all sunshine and rainbows? Has everything been like this is easy, like outlet goes here, couch goes here,
Yeah,
property's up and rolling, fully booked? Has everything been sunshine and rainbows, or have there been some
completely. And
challenge?
puppy dogs too.
Yeah, see? Yeah, end
Oh
of
my
podcast.
gosh, no. No. I mean, I think we did not realize what we were biting off in the mountains, in particular, because number one, our area is technically a temperate rainforest. So there's a lot of rain there and it delays a lot of things and it affects some things. But just developing raw land and land that's not flat has posed a lot of problems that we've had to work around. We had drilled a well that was like it was like 1,500 feet deep. So it was like a $40,000 well. We had to frack it. We finally got water when we fracked it. Um, and 10 days later it was dry. So we just had to go find more money and by the way, we had waited about a year for that well truck to come out and dig that well. So we had to find more money to dig a new well, and we had to also wait 3 months. And we had to figure out what we were doing because we had already opened Firefly Cabin at that point we had water. We opened, we booked, we had a fall full of bookings
Oh
and
no.
no water. There's no community well. It's, on a little mountain, we had to figure something out. And so I just told my builder, I said, we have got to think outside the box here, and I need you to help me do that. And so what he came up with was two 300-gallon tanks in the basement. We hooked up a jet pump and we pumped water up into that house from those tanks. We had to pay someone. It cost us almost $2,500 a month for water for 5 months. And because we had to pay someone to go and get water. My builder was gracious enough to allow us to draw water from his well. And they had to bring that up that mountain and pump that water into those tanks every 2 or 3 days.
Every 2 or 3 days.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. It
Dang.
was pretty insane. It was very nerve-wracking. We I don't know. It was a huge setback, and it felt like I couldn't even speak on the call when he told us the well was dry. Um, I just kind of walked away and my husband talked to him and um it took me a couple days to be like, okay, we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna get past it. It was a really big blow. Because we literally had just flushed $40,000 down a well. It was huge. Um, Overall, the new well that we dug is serving 4 properties. So, if you divide what we've spent on water, which is a lot, um, a whole lot, because we had to dig another well, and we had to also, because of that location, we had to dig 4-foot trenches across hundreds of feet across the property to bring that water to different spots, right? Um, Overall, when you divide that between the houses, it's something that we can swallow and it's still worth it. But it just, when these things come along, you just have to be willing to pivot. Were there times that we were like, let's just quit, in our minds for a hot minute? Yes. Yes. Sometimes you just feel like I need a break from this. This is tough. Um but I think what is the most important thing about overcoming those challenges when they come along is that you have done your research ahead of time. You know what you can do with that property. You know the equity you're going to gain. You know what in the worst year you could possibly have, you pretty much know what kind of profit you can make or if you can just break even. So when you have all that research and, have done your due diligence on what your project is, whatever it may be, then in those moments when those come along, you have that all in the back of your mind and you know that you can, make it no matter what, right? It's just if you don't do that, then yeah, I mean, you're gonna question everything every time something comes along.
Yeah, the preparation there is so crucial because You have to, and it sounds crazy, but it's like you got to be prepared for the unexpected to happen. So you have to like take the worst case scenario and really run the numbers and lay out a scenario for like, okay, that's a worst case scenario, but what's the worst of the worst case scenario, right? If doomsday happens, like what could we do and how we pivot? And I think it shows your true colors and character when that does happen. When someone says, "Hey, you just spent $40,000 on a well," they come up, basically smack you in the mouth. They're like, "It's dry. Now what are you gonna do?" Right? A lot of people, like you said, you had that. I think every entrepreneur and business owner has that little thought every once in a while. It's like, I should just quit. Like this is like way too much. Like some,
Maybe the hamster wheel does look kind of nice at this
right.
point. I don't know.
Exactly. But then you collect yourself and you make a decision on how you can pivot and how you can resolve that issue to move on to the next thing. Because at the end of all of this, there's the light at the end of the tunnel. When that property goes live and is running, the reward and the feeling you get of having guests coming and booking, your calendar's full and you have people coming and staying like, oh my gosh, Jandy, thank you so much for letting us stay here. It was just exactly what my family needed or my husband and I needed for our stay. I think that is so rewarding, and you're providing memories and experiences to people, and you're willing to go through those challenges up front to be able to provide those to people that come and stay at your property. So I think it's, if you can withstand that and get through the hard times and the challenges that come and be prepared to handle those, I think it's so rewarding at the other end. And there's also returns that come with it. So that part's also nice as well.
Yeah, I think as entrepreneurs, the whole reason why we're doing these projects or we're thinking outside of the box is because we realize that you know, the whole, map of what as a society we think we should be doing in our lives, we realize that that's kind of a scam. And you're on this hamster wheel, and most people are on it, and then at some point you realize this is kind of a scam. I'm giving all my time. What am I doing this for? And so having that in the back of your mind, I'm jumping off of this hamster wheel. I'm doing something different. I'm moving out of the crowd, and I'm going to make my own path to whatever freedom I desire. I think, when you have that in your mind too, those challenges everything's, you can figure out anything, right?
Exact. I couldn't have said it bad. We're gonna have Jandy on every podcast right there. That was a mic drop end to end a podcast right there. That was incredible. Yeah, it's, I mean, but that's spot on. It really is. And I think when you realize, not everyone has that realization. I know I was stuck in the hamster wheel for 10 years of like, and I just one day got introduced to short term rentals, went down, caught the bug as they say, caught the bug, went into short term rentals, and just had a realization one day. I was like, what? Why am I doing what I've been doing for the last 10 years? And it's like you step off the hamster wheel and you see this other path that you didn't even realize was there, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is incredible. And you do in a way kind of know some of the things that are going to happen, but there's a lot of unknown. But I think the reward you get from that and just the feeling of being able to, we always say this is just providing memories and experiences for families. There's nothing quite like it, right? And
It's
if you're
really
doing,
special.
yeah, it's
It's very
you do it
special.
you do it in a unique way too that allows, then those families, they have this memory and experience. Some people, it's just one memory, they may never come back to your cabin. A lot of people,
Mhm.
if you create that memory and they're just like, wow, this is incredible, you're going to have guests for life, people that are coming back. You're going to have these people who are going out and saying, hey, you got to go stay at this place out in Banner Elk. It's one of a kind. You have to go stay. They become raving fans and advocates for you that you never realized that you could get before, and then that just continues to compound. And again, like the feeling of someone leaving a 5 star. Not even, I don't even necessarily care so much about the 5 star review, but someone that leaves a review that says this place exceeded our expectations and was everything my family or me and my spouse needed. That right there is like motivation and fuel to just continue pushing forward. It's like, this is why we do this. This is why we create these experiences for people.
And people, when they leave those really thoughtful reviews, um, people don't just do that out of the blue because they're, you know, at an average property. they do that when they really have a strong emotion from the experience that they had. If they're leaving those thoughtful reviews and taking the time to do that, they had a wonderful experience. And there's, like you said, there is nothing like providing that and knowing that you did. We've had lots of engagements at our cabins. We've had, so many like 10, 20-year anniversaries. We're one person that's coming to stay soon. Her husband's deploying, I think for a year. And so her and her husband are coming. They have a babysitter for their kids. They're coming to stay, as like their last time together. So, and then I get emotional about these experiences people are having, and it's really special. It's just so special. And then you're providing, your own experiences for your own family, because we go and we do, things together there that we wouldn't do at our own home, and just experiencing a different place. And you have that always. I don't know, it's just that's really special. I didn't have that growing up. We didn't have, a place like that, or um but I always like, had a few friends who they'd be like, "Oh, we're going to the camp or the cabin this weekend." And it just always seemed like such a special experience to have regularly with your family. And it's really cool to have that aspect of it too.
Yeah, well said. It's one of those where some people forget that you also, the perk of it is you get to go and experience
Hmm.
it yourself. Assuming you are, some investors are like, I've never been to my property, which to me is insane. Like, I want to go there, I want to
Yeah.
experience it for one, for
Hmm.
my family, but then two, also be able to put myself in the guests, shoes and be like, what is it like walking through the front door? Little details like, what does it feel like when you grab the handle? Is it do we need a new handle because this one's starting to wear down? Is like, what is the ambiance when they walk in? Like, okay, we need to move that from a design perspective, or we need to make sure the temp is set to something, or if you have a mini split, is it blowing directly at the door? You don't want to be,
Yeah.
you
And
really
a
want
hundred
to
percent the guests know that you've been there and looked at those
yes,
details. 100%.
yes,
Because
yep,
when they
and it,
mention the details, like the all the good details, I mean, because as great and phenomenal as our cleaner is, we rely heavily on her. We let her know that all the time in different ways, because she makes or breaks our business in the mountains. As much as that is true, the guests can tell when you as an owner who you have the most invested in that emotionally and monetarily, they can tell if you've been there and you've paid attention to those details.
yes, the details matter
Mhm.
so much more than a lot of people realize. Um, so we've talked a lot about what you have currently and where you started out. So what's next? I know we've kind of hinted and mentioned the A-frame build you have. What else? What's next for you guys? What do you guys have coming down the pipeline for you guys in short-term rentals?
Yeah, so we are hoping to open this A-frame in the summertime. It's a bigger project. We just really wanted a place that we could go stay comfortably with our family, and also share with people, obviously. But so that'll sleep probably around 8 people. And then we're doing our fourth build on this property is going to be another couples retreat, which I actually think is going to be the best one. I feel like it's going to be the most popular one. It's really cool. It's got just this solid glass wall in the front and sort of this asymmetrical roof line. It's really a cool design. So we're doing that. Those are being built right now. And then we purchased another piece of property to develop maybe 4 to 6 more smaller units on in the same town, but kind of on the other side of the town, in the next county over that's easier to work with, by the way. So
Well, there you go.
it's another consideration. But yeah, so we're doing that. And, at some point, my husband hopes to jump off that hamster wheel a little bit, more fully. And we'll see kind of what happens. But it's a lot of work, but we're really excited. It's exciting to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited for you guys. I'm excited to hear more about it. The one thing that you mentioned was the couples cabin that you have working to come online. You think
Hmm.
that's going to be the most successful yet? We've experienced this, and I think you do have the, is it Skywatch? Which one's the smaller of the two cabins you currently have?
Skywatch. I mean, they're both Firefly's only 650 square feet,
Okay,
so
okay, so
they're both
they're
small.
still small, but so
Yeah.
that's what I think a lot of people don't realize is actually some of these smaller cabins that you are focusing on and promoting from a couple's perspective or small groups tend to do better than these bigger properties, at least what we've seen in the unique space and promoting that on social. Because you could still promote the family properties, there's nothing wrong with that, and those do well. But there's a lot more planning that's involved. If it's a 5 bedroom place, me and my wife aren't going to go book a 5 bedroom place. We're going to go book a 1-1 or a 2-1 or even a studio cabin. And if it's an experience and something nice, we're willing to pay more for that. So I think a lot of people are starting to see this couple's cabin is emerging. If you can do it in a unique way and design it the right way, are doing very well. And some of these places are getting nightly rates that are just
That
are
are the
insane.
same as
That
a 3 or 4 bedroom. Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah, and then you start to look when this is something we're starting to analyze and look at is you start to look at it from a revenue per square foot perspective. And as you add more square footage, some people are like, "Oh, well that revenue number will go up." It actually slowly starts to decrease to where there's almost a sweet spot when you're looking at a square footage and build perspective on when that revenue starts to diminish a little bit by adding more square footage, because then you start to think like,
Right.
okay, well, it's going to take more energy to heat and cool this place. It's going to take more water because more people are staying there. There's going to be more furniture design. Everything starts to incrementally increase. So there's a sweet spot with those cabins, and we've actually talked to someone, Chase. He's actually been on our podcast before. He has a place out in California. He has a place that can sleep, I think 6 or 7 places, and he advertises it as a cabin that can sleep 2. And he said it does so much better as a result of that, even though it has room
Interesting.
room for this 6, because of this emotional. When they're posting about it, it screams and demands the attention of a couple, and those couples are more willing to book, and there's more couples out there that are willing to take this spontaneous trip versus a
Yes.
5-4 or something where you got to
They have to plan
coordinate.
ahead. Yeah. Hmm.
Exactly. Not to say
Yeah,
they're
and
not successful, but
I feel like we book our weekdays maybe easier than the bigger cabins
yes.
because of that. Um, I mean, we don't get the same daily rate during the weekday, but that's all right. I mean, we're still booking, right? So,
Hmm.
um, when we first started, we definitely saw that, doing our research, whether it was AirDNA or just scouring Airbnb and all that, we definitely saw that the smaller couples things did had the highest ADR. So that's what we focus on. We probably, like, from a business standpoint, probably shouldn't be building a big A-frame, but we also just wanted kind of our own place there. So that's a little we fully expect the ROI to not be as good on our A-frame, on
Yeah.
our bigger build. And that's okay because we have the other three to round out the property. So
Yeah. What's the bed bath on the A-frame? I'm curious.
it's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and then it
Okay.
also has like a sleeping area, a sleeping loft. And then we'll have a basement that we're gonna turn it like a partial basement that we're gonna turn into a game room.
That's
So
awesome. That's smart. So I
mhm,
will say we have a 3-2 A-frame that's bigger in Kentucky as
mhm.
well. I don't know what it is, whether it's the structure, the windows. People love the just the A-frame concept. People want to go stay and experience it. Now, my business partner is not, I shouldn't say he's a huge fan of A-frames. He hates the inefficiency of the walls and how much
Yeah,
space you
you
lose
lose a
as a
lot of
result of it.
space. The
Yeah.
bedrooms are tiny.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it photographs well, it does great on video, and people just, it's something about it. People, if it's
It's just
designed
so
well,
different than
yeah,
our
it really
boxes
is.
that we live in.
It's an experience. It's something unique that you don't have every day. So I think you guys will crush it. The game room in the basement is a genius idea. I've seen a couple A-frame properties that have taken the basement, they've stilted them, they've done the basement, they've done. I think it's Diamond View out in Pennsylvania. They've done a golf simulator in their basement, and
Oh,
that
so
just,
yeah.
I think it elevates the experience of
Yeah.
what is already a cool property. So I'm excited for you guys. That'll be awesome.
Thank you.
So perfect. Well, we have the final 2 questions of the podcast that we ask every single guest. So the first question for you, Jandy, is what is your favorite book that has impacted your STR or investing career?
I'm gonna have to go with the good old Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad. Um, it's just all about that really basic mindset shift that needs to happen in order to fully accept the risk that comes along with not doing, your 40-hour work week for someone else for the rest of your life till you hopefully get to enjoy that retirement. So I feel like that was the basis of everything for so many people, and you can't go wrong with that one. I mean, that's just where people need to start, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's a lot of people recommend and mention that book, but what's crazy is a lot of people haven't read that book up until what 2 3 years ago. I had never read that book, and I read it 2 3 years ago, and it's just like you get done, you kind of sit back, and you're like that mindset shift happens. You're like, I didn't
Yeah.
realize this was possible or this was a an option at that point, and then the wheels start to spin and start to happen. So I think
The
it's a
crazy
fantastic
thing is, I
recommendation.
think people instinctively feel there's something right, and
Mm-hmm.
there's just something not right in the way they're living. I think they feel it, but they can't put their finger on it because we are so indoctrinated in so many things. And so when you read something like that, I mean, I think I read that after we had bought our first long-term rental. And it kind of blew my mind, but it was really basic. And it was also, my father was an entrepreneur at heart for sure. And I feel like it kind of brought him back to me because he passed when I was younger. But um, the things that he encouraged me to do in sort of thinking outside the box and making my own path in life. Um, when I read The Rich Dad Poor Dad, it just all kind of came together for me. And my husband read it, and we were like, okay, let's do this, And then one day my husband came home and from work, and just a frustrating day, and he just said, I want to own 10 houses. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Cause I'm more like the risk, like I'm okay with risk, and that he wasn't. And I think there's probably always that balance in a partnership. But um as you dive deeper into investing, you get more comfortable with risk, and you don't see things as a risk that maybe you would have before you read Rich Dad Poor Dad or you made your first investment. And then, you'll get people in your circle talking about the risk that you literally don't see as a risk anymore. So it can be really scary, but man, that book really, it made that shift for me that it has for so many people. So if you haven't read it, go read it. It's an easy, quick read, and it'll blow your mind.
Absolutely will. It is an absolute game changer. So, all right. And the second question: what is one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20?
I think it's about all the same thing, that hamster wheel, and it's about risk. Risk is interesting because I feel like I've learned now that the risk is greater, the opportunity cost is greater than the actual risk of living a life in a different way than what you see, society push you towards. So my father passed when I was 29, and I had my first kid. Um, we were completely in that hamster wheel, and he was 54, and he had built this service business my entire life, and then had sold it and made a great profit and done well. And then passed away a few years later. And it just made me realize we live our lives thinking we have all this time and expecting that we have what we are not guaranteed. And it just that went along with, it kind of prepared me for that mindset shift when I um read Kiyosaki's book. And I wish that I knew at a younger age that, you're not guaranteed anything in this life, right? And that risk is okay. And that risk is actually gives you a far greater reward than living in the safety zone. So,
Oh my, I love that. And I think also with that is surrounding yourself with people who support you when you take those risks. Having a team that cheers you on when you take the risks versus, having a group of people that are pulling you down and saying, "Jandy, don't do that. That's not safe. I wouldn't do that." and taking that advice from people who haven't done it before, surrounding yourself with people who are like lifting you up and be like do it, like go for it, take that shot, and I'm here to support you when it succeeds, and if it fails, I'm also here to lift you up as well. So I think that's so key, and that answer is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
So perfect. Well, Jandy, we are at time. I appreciate you hopping on today. For the listeners, where can they find you, get in touch, and follow along with Out of Bounds Retreats?
Find us on Instagram at Out of Bounds Retreats, and our website's outofboundsretreats.com. Yep.
Perfect. All righty. Well, awesome. Well, that does it. Another amazing episode of the Hideaway Show. She's Jandy. I'm Jordan. Until next time, take care, everyone.